What made you decide to publish your own game?
So we went for a very long time, as is often the case, without playing any tabletop RPGs at all, because my friends all went to different colleges and different schools, and I went to a college that was very far away at the time. Well, I guess not very far, it was a few hours away. So we didn't get a chance to get together. So we probably went about, I would say about 12 years, longer than that, maybe 15 years without actually playing a tabletop role-playing game. And once technology had advanced and I got back together with some of the best friends that I used to have, and we reconnected over the internet on Google Hangouts, and we used to kind of hang out, and my friend Frank showed me Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, which was still fairly new. It had been out for a few years, but it wasn't exploding in popularity. I don't think Critical Role was a major thing at the time, like 5 years ago when we got back into it. And then we just assumed that 5th edition was just a fun version of Dungeons & Dragons. We weren't involved in social media at all. Didn't know much about it. Didn't have any other game books besides the Player's Guide, Dungeon Master's Guide, and Monster's Manual. So we played a couple of sessions online, but then I discovered that my friends were actually not that far away anymore. They lived about 2 hours away. So during the COVID summer of 2020, got together and played all summer long Dungeons & Dragons, again in the same campaign world that I had in high school, which had been 18 years ago at that point, which was Aeres, my high fantasy world that I made that was inspired by J.R.R. Tolkien and Dragonlance. And we had an absolute blast. My friends really enjoyed it, and we got super into it. We bought hundreds of miniatures and battle boards, and we were deep in the weeds with tabletop RPGs again. And that's when I started to think, and this kind of was brought to my attention by my friend Pudgy. He's kind of a bigger guy. That's what his nickname was. If you can imagine our Stranger Things type of gaming group, that was us. It's like metalhead nerd, pudgy guy, like, the stereotypes. He said, why aren't you publishing this and making this into a book? Because he had been a Pathfinder player for many years. He never stopped playing at all, and he was a huge Pathfinder player, so he had a big collection of books. And I was like, well, I don't know. And I started to look into it, and at first I was a little trepidatious because, how do you introduce your own personal D&D setting to a whole audience of people who might not dig it? But I did notice that there were not very many fantasy settings, if any, out there, especially not for 5th edition, that matched the kind of Narnia-esque, classic old school Dragonlance feel of what we had been doing. And that is what prompted me to sit down and get cracking and really write out the campaign world as a setting. And we learned about Kickstarter, and I was like, you know what? Other people might enjoy this. And it was true. We launched a successful Kickstarter for our first setting book, and it was really like a dream come true. If I had shown my high school self that the campaign world that I was obsessed with at that time would actually be a fully fledged out book that other people would play, and yes, I am aware that some people have actually played games in Aeres, I would have lost my mind. And hopefully it continues to bring a lot of joy to people at the table. We're moving into other things, but that's how we got started.